Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare.
Mahabharata, Part 1, Chapter 23, Dhritarashtra's Anxiety. Meanwhile, in Hastinapur, Dhritarashtra was becoming increasingly sorrowful. Needing solace, he once again called for Vidura. "Oh, my dear brother, your intelligence is no less than that of the great sage Bharata. You are acquainted with all the subtleties of dharma. You regard all the Kurus equally. Tell me, therefore, what is good for me and for them. Now that things have taken this course, what should we do? How can we again secure the citizens' faith and love? And especially, how can we avoid total annihilation of our race?" "O King, my dear brother, religion as well as economic development and sense pleasure all depend upon virtue. The success of a kingdom also rests upon virtue. Therefore, O best of men, cherish and love both your own sons and the sons of Pandu. You yourself destroyed virtue when you allowed your sons, headed by Shakuni, to play dice with Yudhishthir. So now, the only way you can atone for this evil and win the praise of the world is to return the Pandavas their kingdom. Be satisfied what is rightfully yours, and do not covet others' possessions." Dhritarashtra shifted uncomfortably in his seat. This was not the advice he had wanted to hear. He was more interested in knowing how the Kauravas could secure their present position. Destiny had conferred upon them sovereignty over the entire earth. Now they needed to strengthen their position in order to rule it successfully. What help would it be to concede the kingdom to their most powerful enemies? Dhritarashtra felt his anger once again rising as Vidura continued speaking. "O descendant of Bharata, I once told you to abandon Duryodhana. Had you listened to me then, you would not be repenting now. Still, you can do it. It is not too late. Cast aside Duryodhana and bring Yudhishthir back as monarch. Let your sons and their followers wait upon the Pandavas. Then have Dushashan apologize to Draupadi in open court. And Dushashan should also beg pardon from Bhima. This will be good for all of us, and it will also save the kingdom from destruction. What else can I advise you at such a time?" Dhritarashtra's anger boiled over. It seemed that Vidura always sided with the Pandavas and never favored him or his sons. Placing his hand on his bejeweled scepter, Dhritarashtra spoke out. "O Vidura, you speak only to please the Pandavas and do not care to please me. I do not approve of your words. How do you expect me to abandon my own flesh and blood for the sake of another's? Although the Pandavas are as good as my own sons, Duryodhana has sprung from my own body. You ask me to leave my own body aside in order to favor another's. Although I hold you in great esteem, my dear brother, today I find your words crooked. I therefore reject them. You may stay here or go away as you please. I no longer require your advice. It is just like this. However well an unchaste wife is treated by her husband, eventually she always forsakes him. Dhritarashtra rose suddenly and stalked off into his inner chambers. Vidura shook his head and sadly said to himself, "This Kuru race is doomed." Vidura decided to follow the Pandavas into the forest, and so he made preparations for his departure. Eti dwik swalilabir ananda kunde swagoshang nimajjantam akyapayantam tadieshitagishu bhaktairjitatvam punak prematastang shatavriti bande. Iti dwik swalilabir ananda kunde swagoshang imajjantam akyapayantam tadieshitagishu bhaktairjitatvam punak prematastang shatavriti bande. Leaving aside their chariots and carrying only their weapons, the Pandavas had begun to travel in a westerly direction, going from forest to forest. They passed through Kurukshetra and crossed over the rivers Yamuna, Drisadvati, and Saraswati. Finally, on the banks of the Saraswati, they saw the great Kamyaka forest. Many ascetics lined the riverbank while performing their sacrifices and austerities. The Pandavas entered the Kamyaka and built themselves thatched huts in which to live. In the company of the Brahmanas, they began to devote their time to sacrifice and scriptural study. One evening, as they sat by the sacred fire, listening to Brahmanas recite Vedic histories, the brothers heard a chariot approaching. They looked up and saw Vidura coming towards them. Surprised, Yudhishthir said to Bhimasena, "Why is Vidura here? Has he been sent to fetch us for yet another game of dice? Does this mean the evil-minded Shukuni wishes to take from us even our weapons?" The Pandavas rose from the fire and greeted Vidura with all respects. They settled him in their midst, and after inquiring about his welfare, Yudhishthir offered Vidura refreshments and a place to rest. The following day, Vidura related to the Pandavas what had recently transpired in Hastinapur. "Oh, Ajata Shatru, I told the king what was beneficial for him, but he did not care to listen. Just as an unchaste wife of a noble man can never be brought back to virtue, so the king will not take to the right path. He will never meet with good fortune. As water falling upon a lotus leaf rolls off, so my counsel had no effect on him. Indeed, he has sent me away with harsh words." The Pandavas consoled Vidura, but then Vidura spoke more. "Now I shall tell you what, in my opinion, will be conducive to your ultimate success. You should bide your time patiently and find ways to increase your strength. Perform asceticism and worship the gods. This will help you to gain power. Always speak the truth and be kind to your dependents and followers. Share your food with them and never boast in their presence. This conduct increases the prosperity of kings. Yudhishthir thanked Vidura for his advice, which he said he would follow. Then another chariot was heard approaching. This time it was Sanjaya coming towards them. Dhritarashtra's charioteer bowed before Yudhishthir and was graciously received with kind words of welcome. And when Sanjaya was comfortably seated, he explained to Yudhishthir why he had come. Having dispatched Vidura with cruel words, the king is now consumed with repentance and sorrow. This very morning, he entered the assembly hall and fell senseless to the floor. When he regained consciousness, he spoke to the assembled kings. My own brother, Vidura, is like the god of justice himself, Yamaraj. Remembering him, my heart burns with anguish and grief. So the king told me to fetch Vidura back to Hastinapur. He said, "Go quickly, O Sanjaya, and see whether my brother, whom I angrily sent away with harsh words, still lives or not. Vidura has never done me even the slightest wrong. Rather, he has suffered at my hands. So bring him here soon, before I give up my life." Sanjaya then turned to Vidura. "O descendant of Kuru, please return to Hastinapur and revive the king. This is his order." Even though Dhritarashtra seemed quite unable to heed his cogent advice, Vidura decided to return. He loved his elder brother. He knew that Dhritarashtra was intelligent despite his foolish behavior. Vidura felt that if he was near the king and able to offer counsel, then at least there would be a chance that his brother would come to his senses. After taking permission from Yudhishthir, Vidura returned to Hastinapur and went to see Dhritarashtra, who was now overjoyed to see him. "O virtuous and sinless one, by good fortune I have got you back. Why, I could not sleep last night, thinking I was lost. O dear king, my brother, I forgive you for your insults. After all, you are my guru and worthy of my highest respect. I came here swiftly when Sanjaya told me of your desire. O king, it is only natural that any virtuous man feels inclined toward helping the distressed. Both your sons and the sons of Pandu are equally dear to me. But because the Pandavas are now in distress, I feel more compassion for them." And so, with apologetic words, the two brothers continued speaking together for some time, happy to be reunited once again. Barangeva mokshang mokshadadhingva nachanyang vrinehang vareshada piha idang teva purnatha gopala balang sadame manasyavi rastam himanyai varang diva mokshang namokshavaringva nachanyang vrinehang vareshada piha Idangte vapurnata gopala balang Sadame manasyavi rastam kimanyay Jaya Radha Damodara Radha Damodara Radhe Jaya Radha Damodara Radha Damodara Radhe Jaya Radha Damodara Radha Damodara Radhe. Duryodhana, however, was not pleased to see Vidura return. He summoned Shakuni, Karna, and Dushashan. The intelligent Vidura has now returned. He is always inclined toward the Pandavas. Now, before he manages to convince the king to bring the Pandavas back, let us all consider what should be done. If I ever again see the Pandavas flourish, I shall not be able to maintain my life. Oh, king, what folly are you speaking? The Pandavas have already left for the forest. They will be gone for the next 13 years. They agreed to accept the wager and will never deviate from the truth. Even if your father does ask them to return, they would never agree to do so until their exile has expired. Anyway, we do not need to be afraid. We need only pretend that we agree with your father and await an opportunity to overcome them again. Dushashan then said, "Oh, uncle, I like your advice." Karna then looked at Duryodhana, who was still feeling uneasy. "O king, all of us here are your friends and well-wishers. We shall always support you against the Pandavas, so you have nothing to fear. But I agree with Shakuni. The Pandavas will not break their vow, and if somehow they do return, then we can find some means to again defeat them." Duryodhana turned away from his counselors. He stood and looked out the latticed window at the beautiful palace gardens. He breathed heavily and ground his teeth. How could he ever be happy as long as those Pandavas were still alive? Then Karna said, "O ruler of men, I know what you are thinking, and I share your same feelings. We must root out the Pandavas once and for all. The dice game has not settled the issue, because the Pandavas still live." Karna's handsome face contorted with anger as he thought of Arjuna, his old rival. He longed to face him in battle. 13 years was a long time to wait. Striding back and forth, Karna spoke on passionately. "O king, here is my honest opinion. Let us now put on armor and take up our weapons, mount our chariots, and in force go to the forest. We will find the Pandavas and kill them. This is a good time while they are destitute and weakened by sorrow. They have no power, no influence. We will easily be able to defeat them." Everyone was stirred by Karna's strong words. His was the right solution. So without hesitation, Duryodhana arranged for a large force to accompany him. With Karna and his brothers by his side, Duryodhana set out for the forest. However, On their way out of the city, they met Srila Vyasadeva. The sage had seen Duryodhana's plan by his spiritual vision. Vyasa ordered Duryodhana to return to the palace. The prince felt chastened, but he dared not defy the order of the rishi, for he feared the power of Vyasadeva's curse. Vyasadeva then went to see Dhritarashtra, and when he had been properly received and worshipped, Vyasa said to his son, "O greatly wise Dhritarashtra, listen as I tell you what is best for the Kurus. I am not at all pleased that the Pandavas have been sent to the forest through dishonest means. If you do not return their kingdom, then at the end of 13 years, they will not have forgotten their enmity, and without doubt, they will kill all the Kauravas." Vyasa sat upon an elevated seat in the Kuru assembly. He looked at the king, who sat surrounded by his ministers and counselors. They all listened respectfully as Vyasadeva continued. "O king, your foolish son now desires to slay the Pandavas. You should check him. If he tries to kill those heroes in the forest, he will lose only his own life. O descendant of Bharata, Duryodhana regards the Pandavas with such envy that unless you interfere in his evil schemes, your son will cause the Kuru race to be destroyed. Now instead, O king, why not send Duryodhana to the forest to serve the Pandavas? He will then be out of harm's way. Perhaps the virtuous Pandavas will even come to like him, although I am doubtful about that. The nature a man acquires at birth stays with him all of his life. It seems impossible that Duryodhana would ever be able to humble himself before the Pandavas or before anyone else." Vyasadeva then looked around the assembly. "O Bhishma, Drona, Vidura, what do you think? And what is your view, O king? You should do the right thing immediately, otherwise your happiness will be destroyed." Dhritarashtra then lifted his hand, which was decked with gleaming rings, and placed it against his forehead. "O illustrious one, my father, I did not like this gambling business from the beginning. I think I was forced to give my consent by irresistible destiny. For neither Bhishma, Drona, Vidura, nor Queen Gandhari liked the dice game. I have no doubt that it happened under the deluding potency of the Supreme Lord, known as Maha. I knew all of this at that time, but due to my paternal love, I was unable to abandon the envious Duryodhana. O king, I can understand how you feel. The son is always a man's most dear object. But how is it that you do not also see the Pandavas as your sons? They are suffering distress. Why do you not feel compassion for them now? I am addressing you as my son. I feel the same love for my other two sons, Pandu and Vidura. And you have 101 sons, whereas Pandu only has 5. Oh, when I think of Pandu's sons, I wonder only how I may help them. O best of men, if you wish to keep all the Kurus alive, then order Duryodhana to make peace with the Pandavas." Dhritarashtra slowly shook his head, his brilliant crown catching the sun rays pouring through the windows. O wise Rishi, it is exactly as you say. I know it well, as do all these kings. I have already heard the same advice from Bhishma, Vidura, and Drona. But somehow or the other, I cannot follow the advice. Please therefore be gracious to the Kurus and instruct my wicked son to take the righteous path. Vyasadeva, who could see past, present, and future, replied, Yes, soon the illustrious Rishi Maitreya will come here after having visited the Pandavas. He will admonish your son for the sake of the Kuru's welfare. Follow his advice without hesitation. Otherwise, he will curse your son. Then Vyasadeva stood up and left the assembly. And just as Vyasadeva predicted, Maitreya Rishi soon arrived. The itinerant ascetic, who carried only a staff and a water pot, was received with all respect by Dhritarashtra and his sons. They worshipped Maitreya with offerings of arghya and other rituals. Dhritarashtra then offered Maitreya a jewel-encrusted seat in the assembly. And when the sage was seated comfortably, Dhritarashtra asked, O illustrious one, was your journey from the forest a pleasant one? Are the 5 heroes, the Pandava brothers, living there happily? Will they spend the full 13 years there? And how will the brotherly affection between my sons and my nephews be restored? Maitreya looked around the assembly. While on pilgrimage, I came to the Kamyaka forest and met Yudhishthir and his brothers. They are now wearing deerskins and have matted their hair, and they live there, surrounded by rishis. And I heard from them of the grave errors Duryodhana committed, and of the terrible danger that you now face as a result. Therefore I have come here to offer some advice. My affection for you is great, and I always wish you well. But tell me, how is it possible that you overlook Duryodhana's evil actions? How could both you and Bhishma have allowed Duryodhana to create such enmity with the Pandavas? Here, you are the monarch. You are thus able to punish wrongdoers. For having allowed wicked acts to be perpetrated in your own assembly hall, you have been condemned by the sages, O king. Do you not fear the consequences? Then Maitreya turned toward Duryodhana, who scowled at his words. But the sage spoke softly. O mighty armed hero, I utter words meant only for your good, as well as that of the Kurus. You should know, the Pandavas are indeed the whole world. So do not quarrel with them. The Pandavas are all as powerful as thousands of mighty elephants. They are virtuous and possessed of great prowess. Why, with his bare hands, Bhima has slain 3 powerful Rakshasas, enemies of the Celestials, who are capable of assuming any form at will. Bhima killed these 3, Hidimba, Baka, and Kimera, as easily as a tiger kills small deer. Do you remember how that same Bhima killed in single combat the invincible Jarasandha? Who is so foolish enough to create enmity with such heroes, having as they do Krishna, Drupada, and Drupada's sons as their allies? So take my advice, dear child, and make peace with the Pandavas. Do not bring this danger upon yourself." Making no reply, Duryodhana looked away. He exposed his thigh and slapped it loudly, then hung his head. Stretching his leg as if bored, Duryodhana scratched the ground with his foot. And when he saw this impudence from Duryodhana, Maitreya's eyes turned red with anger. He touched holy water, and holding the sacred thread hanging from his shoulder, said in a voice like thunder, "O insolent one, since you slight my words and pay no heed to my advice, you shall soon reap the result. In the great war, which will spring from the wrongs you have perpetrated, Bhima will smash your thigh with his mace." Immediately, Dhritarashtra became alarmed. He sought to console and gratify Maitreya with gentle words, asking him to be merciful towards his son. Maitreya replied, "Only if Duryodhana makes peace with the Pandavas will the curse be lifted. Otherwise, it cannot be reversed." Dhritarashtra felt a little relieved, having managed to mitigate Maitreya's curse. He then said, "O Rishi, we have heard how Bhima destroyed Hidimba and Baka, but not Kimera. Who was that demon? What was his strength, and how was he killed? We wish to know everything." "No, I will not speak any further to this assembly, because Duryodhana has rejected my words. Vidura knows well the history of Kimera, so he can explain." And with that, Maitreya rose and left Hastinapur. When Maitreya was gone, Dhritarashtra asked Vidura to relate the story. "O king, I heard this story from Yudhishthir when I spoke to him in the forest. Having left Hastinapur, the Pandavas traveled for 3 days and nights, finally arriving at Kamyaka forest. And as they moved through the forest during the fearful hours of the night, they encountered a terrible Rakshasa who had flaming eyes. He stood as tall as a tree and held a blazing torch. With arms and legs outstretched like the branches of a huge tree, he blocked the path of the Pandavas. He had 8 fangs protruding from his wide-open mouth, and his eyes were the color of copper. His flaming red hair stood erect, and he resembled a mass of clouds charged with lightning and adorned by a flock of cranes. Roaring like thunder, he spread his Rakshasa illusion and confounded the Pandavas. The assembly listened spellbound as Vidura retold what he had heard from Yudhishthir. Birds and other creatures dropped down everywhere simply from hearing the demon's awful cries. Deer, buffaloes, leopards, and bears fled terrified in all directions. The very forest itself seemed to be moving due to all the fleeing creatures. Then a violent wind blew up and dust clouds swirled. Just as grief is the greatest enemy of the 5 senses, that Rakshasa appeared so to the 5 Pandavas. Spying the brothers from a distance, clad in their deerskins and carrying weapons, the Rakshasa obstructed their path like the Mainaka mountain. When Draupadi saw the horrifying creature, she closed her eyes and stood amid her husbands like an agitated river amid 5 hills. At once, Daumya uttered Vedic mantras to counteract the demon's illusions, and the wind ceased and the dust settled. Seeing his power checked, The Rakshasa opened his eyes in anger. He looked like death personified. But Yudhishthir was stern. "Who are you? What do you want of us?" "I am Kimera, the brother of Baka. I live comfortably in this uninhabited forest. I eat all kinds of men foolish enough to come here. So, who are you that you have come today to become my food?" "We are the 5 sons of Pandu. We have been exiled from our kingdom and desire to spend our time in this forest, which is obviously your dominion." With their identity now disclosed, the Rakshasa bellowed in joy. "Ha! What good luck! Fate today has accomplished my long-cherished desire. I have wandered around in the hope of finding Bhima, my brother's killer. Now he stands here before me in the dead of night, when my power is greatest and when I am hungry. Disguised as a Brahmana, this wretch slew my brother and stole his sister. Now I shall wreak my vengeance upon him. I will kill Bhima and offer his blood to the departed soul of my brother Baka. In this way, I shall be freed of my debt to my brother. I shall devour Bhimasena, digesting him, just as Agastya digested the Asura Vatapi." Yudhishthir rebuked the Rakshasa. "Oh, this can never be." Then the mighty Bhima at once tore up a huge tree and stripped it of its branches. And in the twinkling of an eye, Arjuna strung his bow and stood with an arrow at the ready. But Bhima stopped his brother and alone advanced to face the demon. Tightening his waistcloth, Bhima shouted out an angry challenge. "Stay and fight!" Armed with the tree, Bhima rushed towards the Rakshasa. Just as Indra hurls his thunderbolt, Bhima brought down the tree with great force upon the Rakshasa's head. The tree smashed to pieces, while the demon remained unmoved. He then hurled his flaming brand at Bhima, and it flew towards him like a streak of lightning. Bhima dropped quickly to the ground and turned the torch away with his left foot. Roaring terribly, the Rakshasa himself tore up a great tree and rushed at Bhima like Yamaraj bearing his death-dealing staff. The two combatants pulled up tree after tree and hurled and smashed them together as they fought. The battle resembled the ancient fight between Bali and Sugriva, and soon a large area of the forest had been stripped of trees. The angry demon then lifted and hurled a massive rock at Bhima, who caught the boulder and tossed it back. Kimera rushed at Bhima with outstretched arms, just as Rahu goes to devour the sun during the eclipse. They grappled together, rolling about on the earth like a couple of infuriated bulls locked in mortal combat. The fight was fierce and hard, lasting for almost 1 hour. Bhima, proud of his strength, was conscious of Draupadi watching him. Then he remembered Duryodhana's insults towards the princess. Looking at the demon as if he were the Kaurava himself, Bhima's anger swelled up. He seized the Rakshasa like one maddened elephant seizing another. Kimera also seized Bhima, but Bhima lifted him and threw him down violently. He then took hold of the demon by the waist and began shaking him, just as trees are shaken by a hurricane. And even as he was being shaken, the demon reached up and with all of his strength grasped hold of Bhima by his neck. Repeatedly, Bhima lifted and smashed the Rakshasa down, while the demon gripped Bhima with his hands like steel vices. The earth shook and the forest echoed with the sound of Kimara's body striking the ground. Kimara roared fearfully like a discordant trumpet. Bhima lifted him and hurled him around with tremendous power. Seeing that the Rakshasa had fallen unconscious, Bhima then threw him to the ground. He placed his knees on his chest and strangled him. And as the demon died, Bhimasena said, "O you sinful wretch, you need no longer wipe away the tears of Baka and Hidimba's relatives, for now you are going to join them." Leaving Kimara's dead body lying on the forest path, devoid of clothes and ornaments, Bhima rejoined his brothers. They gathered around him and praised him. Again, placing Draupadi in the center of their party, they entered deeper into the forest. The entire assembly was amazed to hear this story. Then Vidura concluded, "This is what I heard from Yudhishthira. When I was passing through the forest, I saw for myself the dead body of the Rakshasa after being smashed by the blows of Bhimasena." Dhritarashtra sighed but said nothing. He was becoming increasingly anxious. Bhima had promised to kill all of his sons. Who or what could ever prevent Bhima from fulfilling his promise? And so the king's heart burned with fear and anguish.